Hey everybody, it's Marie Haynes here, and we're going to try this again, doing another broadcast of search news you can use. If you were with me last time I did this, you know that I messed up a lot of stuff trying to use the technology. So I think this time I've got it. Feel free to jump in and add a comment when I'm finished reviewing the newsletter and looking at all of the things that's happened in search in the last couple of weeks. I'll take a look at comments if we have any. And I'm happy to give my opinion and my thoughts on any of the questions that you might have. For those of you who are watching this live, it is April 24th, which in the SEO world is a pretty big date. You probably recall that something big happened 6 years ago today, and that's when Google first launched the Penguin algorithm. Most of you probably know my story, but I actually used to be a veterinarian. And when Penguin came out, I mean, I've been interested in SEO for quite a few years. I've been doing it as a hobby for over 10 years now. When Penguin first came out, though, it was devastating, and the search forums were just loaded with people who had been killed by Penguin. And I'm sure most of you who are doing SEO are saying, oh, you know, I didn't have any sites that were affected by Penguin because I never did any spammy stuff. But really, if you were truly experimenting in SEO and finding out what worked back prior to 2012, you probably were affected somehow by Penguin, or at least you know somebody who was. So back in the summer of 2012, I was pregnant and went on bed rest. And it turned out that I had all day long to just review SEO forums. I used to hang out in the SEO chat forums, and it was pretty cool. To see all the discussion about Penguin. I mean, it wasn't cool that people were struggling with their websites, but that fueled a passion for me where I could wanted to learn everything I could about Penguin. I started to write some articles about the things that I discovered, and got all sorts of people that allowed me to review their site. Initially, I did it for free. Whether I thought you were hit by Penguin. We didn't have a solution earlier that early. And that's launched a massive career for me where I'm still licensed as a veterinarian, but I love what I do in SEO. So without any more discussion on Penguin, because I know it's a painful subject for many of you, let's get into the newsletter here. And we'll see if I can do this without messing things up this time. So this is our newsletter for the last 2 weeks, and I'm excited to tell you that we are now going to attempt to do the newsletter weekly. So every Monday afternoon, you should have a new version of search news you can use. And we're going to go over the free version of the newsletter today, which talks about different algorithm updates and any Google announcements that you really need to know about. So there was another algorithm update on April 16th of this year. And thankfully, Google is starting to confirm algorithm updates again. We said this before, but Google has they tell us that they do 3 or more updates every single day. However, every now and then they do what they call a broad core algorithm update. And that's what happened on April 16th. So Glenn Gabe tweeted about a number of sites that saw either increases or decreases on this date. I looked through all of our client data, and most of our clients stayed relatively. We have some slight increases. We have one client that saw a massive increase. We've been working with them for years to improve site quality, so that was really a nice thing to see. We did have a couple, in all honesty, we had a couple of clients of ours that had seen really nice increases on the March 9th update that saw a lot of those increases get clawed back with this April 16th update. And so I think that Google is just tweaking things. You know, they made some changes around March 9th, which we'll talk about in a second, that were quite significant. And, you know, I think they look at, that's part of what the quality raters do too as well, right? Google pushes out an algorithm update. Creators look at the new results and say, well, you know, now this site is surfacing and maybe it's not so good. And then Google tweaks things. So it's a bit early at this point to determine exactly what has happened with April 16th. We'll have more information on that, hopefully in the next algorithm update. March 23rd. I spoke about that a lot in our last newsletter. March 23rd was a tricky algorithm update because Google did something, but SEMrush, who a lot of people use for looking at competitor data, amongst other things, was showing big drops for almost everybody. And it turns out that SEMrush did some updates to their keywords in terms of what keywords they were using to determine rankings and traffic estimates. And a lot of the drops that you're seeing on SEMrush are not true drops. With that said, though, a lot of sites actually did see a lot of drops. And somebody asked John Mueller whether this one update had to do with site switch to mobile first indexing, and his answer was no. So I'm still looking for sites that are switched to mobile first indexing. As a little aside, if you want to know whether your site is in mobile first indexing now, one thing you can do is look at the cache of your site. You can do that by just typing in cache : and then your site. And you should be able to determine whether Google's seeing the mobile version of your site in the cache or not. And so if they are seeing the mobile version, then you're switched over to mobile first indexing, which I have not seen a lot of evidence of that as of yet. Apparently it's happening, but I have not seen it yet. An interesting thing about this March 9th, I call it now the March 7th to 9th update because I first coined it March 9th because that's when I was seeing changes. And then Nathan Johns from Google said, no, actually, we started releasing it on March 7th. And so I know Glenn Gabe had seen some sites that saw changes on March 8th. Regardless, if you were hit March 7th to 9th, this really was a big update. And one of the things that Google John Mueller had said Hangout now just recently was that this update was about relevance. And what we're seeing, so most of what my team and I are doing these days is site reviews for sites that have been negatively affected by algorithm updates. We do also look at sites that have not been hit by algorithm updates just to help them overall improve quality. But we have seen a lot of sites that were hit at this March 9th time. And one of the things that we're noticing is these are sites that are relatively big names. And they used to rank for things where they've basically just taken other people's content and reworded it. So one of the sites that we reviewed was a site that had a lot of content from Reddit and other social media sites, and they had reworded it and published it. And I think that in the past, Google could not recognize that that was copied content. And now I think they're getting better at seeing that, oh yeah, this is the same story that's on Reddit, that's on 1,000 other sites. And so if you're doing that, in order to rank for that content, you really, really need to add information that is extremely usable. It's not enough to just use your own words, that it has to be uniquely valuable as well. The other site that we saw recently reviewed was a job site that essentially had the same information that you'd find on all the big job sites, and so they saw losses as well. So if you were hit with March 9th, I do think that recovery is possible, but I think it's quite difficult. And I think that if you were hit on March 9th, it probably means that you're actually a pretty decent site that used to get good search volume, but now you need to find ways to add unique value, and that can be quite tricky. We don't have time to get into all the things that you can fix, but I do believe that we'll see some recoveries from that update. So yeah, Google gave us more information on autocomplete. I'm not sure why Google published this because it's essentially, there's nothing really new here. They did encourage us to submit feedback if you're seeing an autocomplete, so an auto suggestion basically, or Google says, now they don't want to call them suggestions, they want them to be predictions. They're trying to guess what you're going to type to save you some time in typing, especially on mobile. But if you see something that doesn't seem to make sense, or maybe it's hateful, then you can submit feedback. And we've done that a few times. We've done that sometimes with featured snippets, where one of our clients is having trouble winning a featured snippet, and maybe the site that's ranking number 1 or has the featured snippet is totally not relevant. So we'll have everybody in office submit feedback, and sometimes that seems to work. It's hard to know whether it's our suggestions or changes that we've made, because we're usually working on a bunch of at once. So those of you who are job listing schema, it's important to know that you can actually get a manual access job listings. So it's important that if you do put schema on job listings, that you remove job listings that have expired, because that's not good for users. I kind of feel, I haven't actually seen any of these penalties yet, but I kind of feel like if you do get a schema penalty, all it will do is just remove your site from the job listings. Maybe that's a big deal for some people, but it's not like it will affect your organic search traffic. So something to pay attention to. This is good news that Chrome, as of Chrome 66, which I'm pretty sure I have updated to Chrome 66, they're going to start muting autoplay video by default, which is really, really good thing. I know this next section is more about PPC than about organic search, but we have a number of clients that this affects, and Google has made some significant changes in terms of treatment center ads. So we're talking about rehab centers and places like that, drug rehab centers, things like that. If in the last year or so, if you were trying to rank for drug rehab centers, you would not be able to buy PPC ads for that. And that was because there was so much spam in the industry. So Google's now going to start allowing some of those PPC ads to come back again. They have to be vetted by a company called Legit Script, and they're going to make sure that you're not just some spammy organization that's trying to get affiliate leads, that you're actually helping people and giving good information. So that's something interesting to know. I find this really, really fascinating. Jennifer Slegg wrote about this in the SEM post. I highly recommend reading the SEM post. It's really a great source of information. She noticed that sometimes now Google is showing this carousel that says mentioned in Wikipedia. And there's a reason why I think this is significant. So what she gave was an example of if you search for dog food brands, then the search results, and this happens on desktop and not just mobile, say dog food brands mentioned on Wikipedia. Then it shows the brands. So here's my information on why I think this is important. You know that I am really a big proponent of the quality raters guidelines, and that we can get a lot of really good information from these guidelines. The guidelines talk a lot about Wikipedia. Now, we know that, Google's not going to be reliant on just one website in order to determine rankings, but if you have mentions in Wikipedia, this counts towards your expertise, authoritativeness, and trust, your EAT. So if you can do, now it's hard to get into Wikipedia, right? You have to be legitimately a recognizable brand. So if you are a recognizable brand and you don't have a Wikipedia page, it's something to look into. It's extremely tricky to get a page, but if you can, I do believe that this helps your organic rankings. I don't think it has anything to do with the links coming from Wikipedia, because those links aren't followed. But rather, Google is saying, okay, if everybody is talking about this company, if Wikipedia thinks the company is important enough to write a complete article about it, or at least to quote it, then that might be a site that is more authoritative, and that can help boost your rankings. If you do have a recipe site, there's some important news about some schema that you need to change in order to rank in image search, which is really important for recipe sites. So that's something to pay attention to as well. We'll talk a little bit about local SEO news. There's a new guide on Google on using Google My Business, worth paying attention to. There are also some new guidelines for adding events on maps. And this is something I think a lot of businesses don't really know a lot about. Joy Hawkins wrote a really good post on this. And I see a lot of people that kind of misuse events. You can actually get a penalty for misusing events. So for example, you could say, oh, we have this big event. It's a I don't know, it's just something that's not actually an event, and mark it up as an event just so you get you get more things in the SERPs. And so, be careful that you're not just making things events. Like Joy said here, 50% off is probably not an event. I don't know. It's debatable. So this is old information now. Google My Business was missing data for Friday the 13th of April, and now that's been replaced, so you don't need to worry about that. I wanted to talk a little bit about Google My Business descriptions. these descriptions are interesting. So we spoke about them in our last episode, and basically what you can do is write a description of your business. And in the past, when descriptions were there, the keywords in the descriptions actually helped with rankings. And so you saw all these really spammy, keyword-laden descriptions. We don't think that the descriptions help with rankings anymore. However, Google keeps playing around with where they're putting the description. So there were some tweets from people in the local SEO space that were showing that the description was actually at the top of the knowledge panel. And then in other places, on mobile, they were hidden behind an About tab. So something to keep an eye on. I do think that everybody who has a Google My Business listing should be writing a very thorough description. And because obviously Google is using this, and that's how people are going to be able to perceive your business, by the description that you've written. Joy also noticed that Google sent out, so we all get those emails that say, oh, you've received a review, and then you click on the button to read it, and there was an error. I don't know if that's been fixed, but if you're seeing an error, don't worry. It's not likely a problem with your listing. It's just something that that Google has a bug about. We did write about a few tools. I thought that this was pretty cool. Perna has talked a lot about this, where you can easily make a chat bot just using your content from your frequently asked questions page. So that's something that is pretty cool. Let's see here. I do have a section in here about SEO jobs. I'll just plug our own business again. If you're anywhere near the Ottawa area, we're still looking for people to come and work with us. You don't need any experience, but if you want to learn about SEO, we're really doing a good thing with our team here. So every day, we treat these almost like cases, like medical cases, where we look at sites that used to perform well, and then we figure out, why are they not performing well? And it's pretty cool to have a whole team doing these types of analyses. So we've just brought on a new employee last week, and we're looking to hire a couple more probably over the next year, maybe even quite a few more. So we'll see. So that's all we have for now. In the paid version of the newsletter, there's quite a bit more information and some tips. I know we got quite a few new paid signups with this episode, so I think there's some good things in there that people can take advantage of. Let's just switch back here to stop sharing my screen, and we'll see if I can do that correctly. All right, I didn't mess it up, I don't think. Let's see. Oh, and we actually have some comments this time. So thanks, guys. I know, thank you for putting up with me in my trying to learn the technology. Let's see here. Yeah, so Raven Tools. Hey, thanks, guys, for joining the Hangout. The question was about job description schema. And interesting to know that Google is then essentially holding your site responsible for updating content. That's really, I mean, in terms of schema, look at it from Google's perspective, right? If I was looking for a job and every single job that was marked up with schema, that means that it appears in the search results is not an active job, that's going to be frustrating, right? So I don't know whether that's unprecedented or, I mean, because we've had schema penalties for things like reviews that are inaccurate. I think more it's kind of, I don't know, it's just common sense. I think that you don't want to mark things up that don't actually exist. Andrew Martin has a comment about being nervous of Wikipedia being shown off like that. I'll tell you, if you look at the quality guidelines, the quality raters guidelines, and do a control F for Wikipedia, it's incredible how often it's mentioned. So we don't know, is Google using Wikipedia in their search results? I think it's just another page. It's an authoritative page. And whether I even think that when you get mentions in forums, that those speak to your EAT, your expertise, authoritativeness, and trust. And now, as soon as I say that, all the spammers are going to go out and start making their own forum mentions. I think that Google's actually pretty good at figuring out what is a legitimate mention, and when you're doing it on your own. I know from doing link audits, it's super obvious when a marketing company has been doing mentions for their company. And then you can tell when there are patterns. So I think really anywhere that you can get people talking about your business online is a good thing. So, I do think that all businesses should be, if it's relevant, should be participating in Reddit, in Facebook, anywhere where Google can have access to the content. They see that if people are talking about the business, if it's a legitimate business, then that's maybe something that they want to rank higher. And let's see, another comment. This is great that you guys have comments. That's making me happy, because last week we had no comments. I think I actually had comments turned off, so it's user error here. Let's see. Do you think a website would be overly optimized via image alt tags? That's interesting. I think it can contribute overall to over optimization. I kind of feel like Google has a score, and it might be per page, it might be per website. And they look at things like, if your keyword is green widgets and every single image on the page has green widgets there, and then every H tag contains the word green widgets, and the title tag is green widgets, and you've used green widgets 100 times on the page, that Google can pretty quickly determine that that's not high quality. I can't say that I've ever seen a site that I felt was demoted just because they've overused keywords and alt tags. So I do like to use keywords and alt tags, but I also like, I should say alt attributes. It's not officially a tag, it's an attribute. I do kind of use the rule of thumb that, alt attributes are there for accessibility. And so if somebody who has vision issues is trying to look at the page, and then they have the page read out to them, they're going to hear the alt attributes. So you want to make it something descriptive. I don't think that that's going to cause a site or a page to be demoted just because of alt attributes, but I wouldn't go spamming. And the other thing that I've seen people do too is take every little image, like even on the top of your navigation, or the every single button, and add alt attributes to that. That's probably unnecessary to do that. Expander Digital had a question about who has a good chat bot. I've not had the best experiences with them. I know what you mean. I actually have a website that uses, gosh, how much can I get into here? If you want to contact me, just mariehaynes.com/contact. I'll share with you one of my websites that uses a chatbot that actually is really, really good. I didn't make the chatbot. It's part of an affiliate program that I belong to. And, it really actually looks like you're talking to a human being. And I've yet to see it make up conversation where you just think that it's a bot. So chatbots are good for sites that just have tons of questions, and so if everybody's always asking the same question over and over again, then sometimes having a chatbot is good. But I hear you. I mean, I've been on those types of pages where every single question that you see is, or that you ask is answered in a way that is obviously a robot. So yeah, I don't know. It's something to play around with. I don't have a ton of experience with that, but it does seem to be something that is helpful to people. So that seems to be all we have for comments. We'll put this post up, this video up on our YouTube channel. If you are not subscribed, then I would highly suggest that you hit the subscribe button. We're going to be doing this on a weekly basis, most likely. And we probably will soon be doing a podcast as well. Now, the podcast may just be a reiteration of what I've said here on the video. But if you prefer to get your information by podcast, then keep an eye out for that. If you want to follow me on Twitter, it's at Marie_Haynes. And I tweet a lot of stuff about the things that we're finding in site reviews. So I would love to engage with you on Twitter as well. And that's it. Hope everybody's rankings improve this week, and have a great week.